I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Q&A.
Tom, would you like to kick things off?
Absolutely. And first thing I want to say is I want to thank everybody for tuning in. It's a privilege for us to have you take time out of your day and listen to the show. And if you like the show, let us know. Click the like and subscribe button and click the share button. And that really helps the algorithm. It's a hungry algorithm. Also, if you have questions, send them to questions@creekdevil.com. You were the guys that keep this topic alive, and we want to hear your questions. There are no bad questions except the ones that are not asked. So, again, questions@creekdevil.com. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, so we have a gentleman here. He wants to know about the mind speak telepathy thing, and I think he was referring to the Mr. Black interview. And he wants to know, is that something that Mr. Black says these things, or some of them can do? And, you know, what's Creek Devil's position on this?
Well, what he's told me and other sources are, okay, you have to differentiate. You know, the Sasquatch, what we think of as a Sasquatch or Bigfoot, is a normal part of the planet. Okay, they're another creature out there like all other animals. And they don't have abilities like that. Now, we're going to go down the road and we're going to re-record, or not re-record, we're going to record another interview with Mr. Black soon. And he's going to talk about some different topics. He's going to do one on just UFOs and aliens, and because he was exposed to a lot of different things, not just these creatures. But he told me that there were some of these beings that were coming to the planet that as a form of camouflage, they would make themselves look like things that we might expect to see, whether it's animals, including Bigfoot, normal animals you'd see out there, and even inanimate objects. So, at this point, that's all I'm going to say about it, because I'll let him talk about that when we do that recording with him. But creatures on this planet, I mean, brains in this world really aren't designed as receivers or transmitters of information. That's not how brains work.
Okay, so in a nutshell, I think what we're saying is these are things that are not of earthly origin.
Correct.
They're impersonating, and whereas Bigfoot is something that is native to our planet.
Yes.
So, okay, all right. So got that settled.
You have to differentiate between the terrestrial and the non-terrestrial.
I don't know how you do that if you're standing in front of one. I just want to get away from it.
Well, I think if there's things going on, you know, because we get people to talk about, you know, orbs and UFOs and stuff like that. And I don't know about if they can actually make a direct connection with that. Just because you see one thing and you see another thing in that general proximity, that doesn't mean they're connected necessarily.
Yeah, good point.
Okay.
And if we didn't have enough to worry about out there in the woods.
Oh, yeah, no, I've had long conversations with this one particular Mr. Black, and Tom knows, he's actually spoken with him too. And what Tom says, you know, you're laying there at 2 a.m. in the morning going, la, 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 I don't want to know that. I don't want to know that stuff. But
there was some very weird stuff going on.
He's talked about a lot of strange things. And, you know, they used to tell people I only deal with one crazy subject at a time, so I'm not into all that other stuff.
Because you can only fix one thing at a time or whatever.
Well, it's too much to focus on all that stuff. This subject is overwhelming all by itself.
Exactly.
Okay, Tom, what do we got next? Actually, I should have Milo ask a question because you had some questions.
Oh, okay. Let me see. Well, here's when I, okay, from our notes from the field and tracking North America Sasquatch, that book, Will,
Yeah.
and we were, and I went back to when we had our encounter, and my question is, what kind of questions would have asked ourselves instead of just freaking out and going, "Yep, that's Bigfoot."
That's a good question. It's really hard, I think, for you and I to answer that because we were there in the moment.
Yeah.
And it probably would take, like the rest of you were outside looking at that situation, maybe asking things that we wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah.
Chuck, Forrest, Tom, what do you guys think?
I think you're entirely correct. I mean, you're there in the moment, and you're seeing it in the flesh and blood. So,
I would agree.
What kind of questions would you have asked, though, that we didn't?
Of ourselves, like you guys.
Are you talking about of myself? That
if you heard what we did, what questions would somebody ask us, or what should we have asked each other? I
would ask, how do we get out of here?
Okay.
Yeah.
That I might even have asked that in a moment. But if I was talking to you at a later date and asking you about your sighting, my first thing would have been I would have wanted an anatomical description as best as possible from each and every one of you, and I would have asked you separately rather than together as a collective group. I would have probably let me clarify that. I probably would have asked you separately first, and then put you together as a group, and then ask you that question and see how you're because let's face it, it's just like with the sighting that Jessica and I had. There was a couple of things that I noticed that she didn't notice, and then there was something a couple of things that she noticed that I didn't notice. So that is always going to happen because people focus on different things.
Let me clarify that a little bit, though. There were 4 of us there, and the creature only made, or one of the creatures only made itself visible once, and it was to Milo. The rest of us didn't see any of them.
Oh, well, I mean, see, I wasn't aware of that being the situation, but then Milo would have been on the hot seat. I'd have been asking him specifically for an anatomical description of what he saw. And then I would have gone on to, well, what was it doing? What was, and then, my knowledge would be comparing it to, what would an ape, a primate be doing versus what the Bigfoot is doing. And if there's anything that would be, comparative to both of them, and was it doing anything that was human-like? So, that would be where I would go with my questions.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I wish we could have asked ourselves if we had, because we were just a fledgling little group of high schoolers when we did that. So, I regret not following through with, hey, we should have asked ourselves some investigative questions, and we didn't do it.
High school, so I don't think that you're really. I realized that Will actually became friends with DeHenden and Green and those gentlemen at a later date, I think. But still, you're high schoolers, not necessarily children. I mean, you're still children. Let's face it.
Right.
You're not necessarily going to think about things like that.
I met DeHenden and Green actually a few months prior to that incident, but
did you?
But didn't really know them guys much. I mean, it wasn't like they were instructing me when we were at the camp. They were there looking for the creatures. I was tagging around with DeHenden and Dennis Gates at night. They were on the night part of this the work there, and I was being quiet and just observing. I had no idea. And then when Milo and I and the other guys went to the Clark Ranch, we were just out there to kind of see what we could find and see if we heard or see anything. And then I was going to report back to those guys. Yeah, so we didn't really know what we were doing at all.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, ill prepared. We didn't take anything, even a broken flashlight. Crap.
That was the obligatory flashlight that didn't work, or barely worked.
Nothing worked. It was like, it's what's that? God takes care of fools and children, or something like that. Well,
we
right
had
then
both.
we were everything. So.
Well, I think there's also one out there that says "Fools rush in," but hey, I think that was Alexander Pope that said that. But anyway, "Fools rush in where angels dare not tread."
But we went out there, and we didn't know if there was anything legitimate going on out there anyway. The other guy who said there was screams going on, it was, third-hand information. So we thought, all right, well, let's, we're going to do something, so let's go out there and see. And so it was just totally, we had no clue.
Did have a tip that there was some activity there.
That's all it was.
Went out there. Yep. And it turned out that it was indeed.
Yeah, we
were there.
We walked into a crap storm, basically. Isn't that right, Milo?
Yeah, we came out smelling like roses.
We just got lucky is what we got.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying, Will? What you would, the type of diagnostic information you'd be looking for now as an adult and being familiarized with this subject, would it be entirely, that would have been entirely different from what you would have been viewing it as a teenager.
Absolutely.
You know that. That would just, it's almost like night and day. So, and kids just don't think about that kind of stuff.
Right.
I don't think. I'm sure there's probably somebody out there that's going to say that no, that they were always that way, and that there probably people are. The Einsteins of the world.
and Tom had a good front row seat to see how I functioned in the field last summer. And of course that's completely different than as a teenager not knowing what you're doing.
You just don't go bumbling in anymore.
No.
Oh no. Well, after being in the military, we have little acronyms or synonyms, and salute would work for me now.
Right.
It stands for size, activity, location, unit, time, and equipment. Now you can add and manipulate that for our own good, but that's where I would start from now on. Something like that where it would give me common ground with stuff, and that's where I think it goes with describing everything like ape-like, because that's the only thing we have to work with. It isn't something that's it allows the layman to understand that this thing is, it belongs out there, and we don't.
See,
Milo,
go ahead,
that
Tom.
brings up a good point. Well, I'm curious. Looking back in hindsight, Will and Milo, why do you think these things took an interest in you? Were you kind of invading an area that, because you're by a pond, maybe they considered that a feeding area?
It was a marshy area.
Yeah, it was pretty marshy.
Why do you think they took an interest in you? If you had to,
because we built a big fire, we had food, and we were noisy. That's probably all it was.
And they're curious. There was like something about us that, I would, if I was one of them. Well, I'm not. I mean, just like, well, this is interesting. Go check this out. Hey, Bill, come on, let's go look at these guys over by the campfire.
Well, I think that's kind of a predatory nature. I mean, it's not unusual for, campers to have grizzly bears, black bears, or even mountain lions wander into a campsite because they're wondering what the heck's going on. They smell food, and here they come. And, Bigfoot, I think, is going to act the same way, because I think they are an apex predator in the environment, and they're going to, let's go see what those humans cooked up tonight. Maybe it might be something we might like.
Well, and from what the Clark said,
menu too, if there's not enough.
Yeah, what the Clark said, there was a lot of that screaming going, and there had been for some time. So apparently there was a lot of activity there, and we kind of stepped into their environment, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
Curiosity.
Now, is that the same area where, Will, you're talking about? You guys had a campfire and somebody threw like
no.
a
Yeah.
spear
No,
up
no,
a
that was
mountain,
different.
and then
Different place.
Oh, that was?
Different place. We were, that was out by where your mom lived at the time, Milo. We only went to the
Oh, back
Clarks.
there?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
only went to the Clarks once. I mean, out in the woods. We went there with John Green briefly after that incident, but we didn't go out there again looking around. It was frightening enough. We didn't want to go out there again.
Yeah, well, being prepared. Next time, I think we stayed up and I was in my yellow rain suit, of all things, on that one at my mom's.
Yeah, it was wet when we went there.
Yeah. No, I wasn't camouflaged at all. I didn't even know what that word meant back then, probably.
Oh, none of us did. But what was your question about that, Tom?
well, the question was, it's got to be kind of scary the fact you throw something up there, and did you expect any kind of a response?
That was John's brother that did that.
Okay.
His little
Did
brother.
any of you guys?
Gunpowder incident.
No, yeah, we were all, there were 10 of us at the camp. We had 2 campfires going because there were so many of us, you couldn't get everybody around one fire. And so we were standing there talking, and John, his brother, younger brother, Jeff, threw a rock out into the woods. And then he said, and then almost immediately, he asked John, he says, "Well, do you think I'll get in trouble if the guys know I did that?" And John was like, "Yeah, you get your butt kicked." And then it wasn't but a few moments after that a long branch come flying back in out of the darkness.
And there was nobody who lived around my mom back then either.
There was nobody.
It was just woods.
Yeah, that was a big wooded area up there.
So,
Okay, what do we have for the next question?
Okay, well, let me see. Okay, on page 56 of your new book that I just got, and it's awesome, by the way. Let me just put that out there. You have this big twisted tree that's twisted. Like, I can't tell how tall the tree is, but it got to be like 2 feet, 3 feet in circumference or in diameter. And to me, it was like, it wasn't a sapling, it wasn't anything. It was gigantic and a twisted tree. I mean, where it looks like a towel being wrung.
Well, I'm looking at it right now. That the tree was probably 6 or 8 inches thick, and
Okay.
yeah, it's twisted. Then Milo's talking about my new book, Bigfoot Survival Guide, and
I love it.
I was sent that a number of pictures by a guy actually up in Carbonado and Washington, and he would be out there with his 4-wheeler and on his property doing things out there, and he found these several of these trees, and it's incredible. I mean, the strength it would take to not only bend the tree over, but to twist it like that. I mean, it looks exactly like when I use the description of taking a washcloth, a wet washcloth, and wringing the water out. That's exactly what it looks like.
I took a picture of. Oh, go ahead, Milo.
No, it was like, well, to me, it was just like, there's no way any man or it was like really good description of what Will said. If it was like a common thing, like diseases, there would be more of them.
Well, Tom,
so
what
that really hit?
What I say?
There would be more, coincidental trees that look just like that.
And what I say in the field last July, Tom, we were all heading from one region to another, and I said, "Now, watch for these.
Yes,
if it's common,
it is not.
You didn't see
You'll
any.
see it everywhere.
Nobody saw anything for 30 miles through the forest up there. It was only in certain places.
Only in certain places, and I was going to say, not far from where we were in July, my wife and I had gone hiking in an area, and I took a picture of a tree. It was exactly that. It was twisted. It was rung around. It was probably a good 6 inches in circumference. And you look at it and you're like, well, what force of nature did that? Was there an extremely localized tornado that just grabbed that one tree and it didn't touch any of the others, which is not only unlikely, it's impossible. So all the other trees are fine, but there's this one tree that's totally twisted like a rag. And I remember I sent it to you and you said, yep, that's one of them.
And that's a current question that I ask myself. We talk about that, what questions would you ask yourself? The first time I saw one of these twisted trees was up here in Northern California, and it was in a stand of probably 15 or 20 of these little pine trees, and they were about 12, 15 feet high and about 3 inches thick in the trunk. Not real big yet, but the one in the very middle, 7 feet off the ground, was twisted like that tree. In fact, it was so severely done that you could actually see completely through the trunk of that little tree.
Wow.
But it was wrung just like a wet rag, and not any of the other trees. And they were all close together. It was a cluster of these little trees. So if there had been any kind of phenomena, weather-wise or whatever, it would have affected the trees next to it, because they were all close together. They were touching. And I'm sure once they get big enough, some of the trees will die out because they won't get enough light from the bigger trees. They were that close. So, you have to ask yourself that question. Well, if A, B, and C were to happen, how come you don't get more results from the other trees?
Right, exactly. And, somebody might argue, well, that one particular tree was simply, it was following the sun. It was, for whatever reason, maybe it was following the sun as being twisted because you see that with junipers, but it affects all the junipers. This is one tree in a group of them that is twisted and wrung out like a wash rag, and all the others are untouched.
And every one of these, when I show pictures of them, either in books or wherever, they're the ones. I'm very picky about that. I don't just show anything out there. These are the ones that are that are really dramatic, and they were freshly done. They weren't old, because you could look at old trees, especially rotted ones, and weather can affect things like that in that way. Because of the rot, they can twist, they can do all kinds of things. But these fresh ones, when the weather's been clear and there's nobody around, and of course, again, you examine the trunk for any kind of tool markings. And I have seen this faked once. There was, and I don't remember the source, but my friend Carlos Esposito that I've talked about from Portland, who's gone now, he was the guy who was into cattle mutilations, but he had his own Bigfoot encounter, so that's how we got to be friends. He and I met a couple of guys who were from Seattle, and they made this really wonderful map, and this was back in the 80s, and it was, of the Northwest with, Bigfoot sightings on it. They really did a nice job on it. And so I contacted them, and they agreed to meet with us because I wanted to ask them if they were still making the map. And so we met in Chehalis for lunch, and they brought some props with them for us to look at. And one of them was one of these, and it's just like you would expect to find, dug fir, and I want to say it was only about 2 inches thick. But it was kind of twisted in a weird way. It wasn't like the ones you find naturally out there that are Bigfoot related. And upon close examination of it, I noticed on either side of the area that was twisted and damaged were these large, they were about 2 inches long, these fish hook shaped cuts into the wood. And I didn't say anything about it at the time, but I went and talked to somebody that I knew in the timber industry and was told that they explained there was some kind of a tool that loggers use that would have done exactly that. So I knew right away this was hoaxed. Somebody did this to try to say it was Bigfoot related, and it wasn't.
Now, these were friends of Carlos, or
no? They were. Carlo and I were out in the Columbia River Gorge one day, and I saw this map on the door on the inside door of this store we stopped at to get some drinks, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. So I copied down the names of the people who made the map, and I contacted them. So they agreed to meet with us, and they brought this stuff with them. And like I said, I don't know where they didn't do it. I don't remember where they got it from, who who was the source of that claim. But it was a hoax.
Yeah. Which is too bad. It's like they can hoax stuff, but I got an idea. Isn't it better to film the real thing? Take a picture of the real thing?
It's out there. I mean, you have to do a little work to find it, but if you're in the right areas, you can find this stuff.
And it's very
come to my backyard.
What's that, Forrest?
Right?
Yeah, she's got it in her backyard.
Just come to my backyard.
Chuck,
I'll do it.
What do you think, Chuck? You haven't weighed in yet.
Just call him Mikey. I'll be there.
This whole discussion has been kind of fascinating. I was kind of wondering about, what would I ask myself about that and about my first sighting or whatever. And I think one of the questions I might have is why. How come there wasn't more people there around me to help me see it? To at least have more witnesses to it.
Yeah. Well, in Will's book, it says never travel alone.
Right.
Well, yeah, there's other reasoning for that.
That's the first thing it says. Never travel alone.
Yeah, don't go alone.
Okay.
Well, in my situation, I mean, I was working and was by myself when it happened. So,
right.
I mean, sometimes, it just happens that way.
Here's a thought. Maybe they don't make themselves known or visible to somebody, by stepping out or whatever, because they've been watching a place or to see how many people are there, and they only do it when there's either one or a very low number of people.
Well, there's always somebody watching. Even when you think you're not and you're looking around to make sure that you're not being watched, somebody always watches. There's something out there that's looking.
Well, that seems to be the case, Milo, because these people that vanish, there's a guy here in Oregon, he was with a group of friends, and he just took off up a trail by himself, and that's the last anybody saw of him. And his poster, that was about 3 years ago, I think. His posters are still all over the place. And
is that near Bend?
No, that was actually down near Cottage Grove, Oregon.
Okay.
And I don't think the sheriff's office ruled it as foul play. They just don't know.
Ooh, Animal House, Cottage
he
Grove.
Just, he just vanished.
Yeah, I've got a question here. And it's changing topic a little bit, so I'll let everybody kind of take turns with this one. Take a deep breath. Would they, for hunting, would Sasquatch smell deer urine? For example, chimps smell leopard urine.
I say yes.
I would say yeah, absolutely. I would think so.
I would say yes, too.
I would, too, yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you why I say yes is I've gone... Back in the day, I haven't been hunting in years, but when I used to go hunt, you'd get this scent that you could spray on your boots. And basically, I think it's just essentially concentrated deer urine. And oh boy, the moment you sprayed that stuff on, you could smell it. But it worked. It really did. It would make them less cautious.
I guess it'd be two different things. I mean, smelling deer urine would be more in the process of hunting deer, I would think, whereas chimps smelling leopard urine would be more of a cautionary situation, wouldn't it?
I have a question. Yeah. Why did you come up with that question?
It's on a list. I have hundreds of questions in front of me. So.
Oh, that was from somebody, or that was a question?
No, that was a question sent to me.
Huh.
Well, felines mark their scents on trees and rocks and such as that. The big cats, even domesticated cats do it, and the males especially. But the females will do it too, and feral cats do it, and so. I would imagine that being that in the natural order of things, that Bigfoot and chimpanzees and gorillas and all such are going to become familiar with that smell. And when they associate that smell with a leopard or a lion or whatever big cat it might be, they're going to respond accordingly and get out of the territory.
Yes, if you're a
Or
Sasquatch,
tear down a tree.
yeah, if you're a Sasquatch, you're probably
I
going to
got
be
a
hunting
question for
when you're
that.
smelling.
My question is this person thinking that they want to cover themselves in? Because to me, if you're going to cover yourself in something that's a prey, I wouldn't do it.
No, I don't think that was the question at all. They were just posing the question. Do you think, that the Bigfoot does what chimps would do?
Smell it, right? We're thinking
Right.
the smell part.
Yeah, for recognition.
Recognizing it or something.
Well, I've got a question, and this is kind of directed towards the group, but also specifically towards Forrest. Forrest, 2 nights ago, you had a visitor thumping around on your roof, right? That's 2 nights ago?
Yeah.
Like a horse up there? And so I got to thinking this morning, I thought, you go to the coast and places like that, and they have seagull spikes. Wouldn't it be interesting to put some of those on the roof of your mobile home, trailer house, and just see if something jumps up there and then you hear a bunch of screaming?
Oh, I think you're going to have a problem with that one. You're making all these suggestions for Forrest and
injury, I think.
And Forrest to be on the receiving end of that.
Right.
Well, they use those in Alaska and Canada too. I don't know, y'all might even up in those areas. I don't know how much problem bears are, but when people vacate their cabins, and actually I think Monster Quest did something on this up at that cabin in the far reaches of Alberta up there. When people leave their cabins, they make what they call bear boards, and they're they're just pieces of plywood that have nails driven through. Everywhere on that board, and so that if they step on that board, it's gonna pierce their pads of their feet. So they put them underneath the windows and at the doors, and if they've got sliding doors, they line them all along that, and they're secured to the ground so that it protects. It keeps, because bears will they're just troublesome creatures sometimes, and they will just push in windows and go right on in, and sometimes even when you're occupying the place. So it's
a welcome mat.
They're called bear boards, is what they're called.
Yeah, it's a welcome mat. Yeah, go ahead. Come on in.
Yeah.
We're about out of time, so let's go around the group here and any final thoughts or comments. Milo, we'll start with you.
Okay. Here's another one I got. Okay, on the we're talking when I was looking at patty pictures, and I was looking at the calves. It looks to me that's a real Bigfoot. Screw everybody else. I think it's real.
Yep, good point. Chuck?
Because I was, I know Forrest was looking at the butt, but I was looking at the calves like, damn, I wish I had calves like that.
Chuck, any final comments or thoughts?
Very interesting discussion today. Very interesting. I enjoyed it.
Forrest?
Well, let me correct you, Milo. I didn't just look at Patty's butt. I've looked her all up and down.
It was a girl too. So what does that say?
No.
You can even of course she's got big breasts, and she's also got a scar over one of her eyes there, and you can actually see that in the film footage, and you can see the muscles moving underneath that skin. It's not something that you could ever recreate with just a bodysuit. And plus the fact that in, 1967, I think was the time that film was done, there was no one capable of making a bodysuit like that. So, I rest my case. And there's no human of proportions that would have fit in that bodysuit correctly. So, anyway.
And I'm going to go with Bill Munns on this. You're right. Even to this day, there's no human proportions that would fit in that bodysuit. And he dissected all the arguments piece by piece, and it's a Bigfoot, plain and simple. And there's been other videos, and when you get the argument that, well, there's no other pictures or videos. Well, yes, there are. There are some out there.
Tom, did you have any final comments or?
Well,
yeah, that was it. Did you get it?
Okay, we got it. All right, guys. Well, listen.
All right.
We're out of time. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.